Hi friends, it's Kayla. Welcome to day 4 of 12 days of fa la 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 la. Today, before we get into any yearly wrap-ups, we need to do my final quarterly wrap-up of the year. This was my most successful quarter. I read 51 books, and of those, I think I had like 10 5 stars, which is incredible. If you want to go back and watch all of these, I share various stats and things. And I said in my last quarter that I felt like this quarter was going to be my moment, and I was right. So if this is your first time being here, I basically run through a couple things, and then I talk about my 5 favorites of the quarter. So to begin with my ratings, make a little pie chart. I gave, like I said, 10 5 stars out. I gave 15 4 stars out, 12 3 stars, 10 2 stars, and 1 1 star. And then there's a couple books I don't rate. Don't add up all my math because it's not gonna work out. As far as genres, the number one thing I obviously read due to the horror video that I did was I read 21 horror books in the last quarter. And then the next highest one is thriller or mystery. After that, there's about 7 fantasy, 6 contemporary, 4 sci-fi, and 2 nonfiction. It's funny because I'm just trying to gather up all of my end of year photos and things now, and I thought that I would have enough fantasy and sci-fi to do individual photos of each, because usually I share like 6 of my favorite thrillers, 6 of my favorite contemporary. Despite reading more sci-fi than I feel like I've ever read, I don't think I'm gonna have enough for a standalone photo. I'm gonna have to make it an SFF photo. Anyway, I'm just bummed out about that. As far as authors I've read before or new to me, I read 30 brand new to me authors, which is pretty cool. Got introduced to a lot of new people, and 20 or so, let's make it 21, are authors that I've read from before, and I was either rereading something or I was reading them just again in another capacity. Did I do any rereads? I'm so used to rereading things in every quarter. I don't think I actually reread anything this quarter. Adult books were made up 40 of the 51, and the rest were YA and middle grade. And then 36 of the reads were new releases, which makes sense because I was catching up on a lot of 2021 releases, and then obviously the Goodreads Horror Awards were all brand new releases. And then 15 older titles, so just anything that came out before 2021. And those are my stats. On to my 5 favorites. Now I have to destroy this beautiful stack. Did I put the favorites near the top at least? No, I sure didn't. Oh boy. Hey, maybe I won't knock any down this time. In some quarters, it's hard to decide my top 5 because sometimes I don't even have 5 stars, which is very sad. This time I have too many 5 stars to choose from. But I think I know. And since I've pitched all of these to you so recently in like wrap-ups, vlogs, hauls, I'm not going to talk about the plot. I'm just going to talk about what worked for me within them. I don't know what order to put these in, and so I'm not going to put them in an order because I don't want it to accidentally contradict my top 10 at the end of the year, which I still haven't figured out. My favorite thing is I've had this like kind of tradition the last couple years that I spend the last week of the month rereading some of my favorites from the year so far and solidifying them in their positions. It's been really fun for me, and I am currently doing that now. So I'm just gonna list them. Okay. Come For Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valenti. This is just so interesting, and it's not the most original story in the world because it's a familiar story. I just thought it was so fascinating. Something I've really been in love with in books recently is a woman who is like being held captive, or like even if she doesn't realize she's being held captive, and she's part of this grander thing going on that she doesn't even know about. I thought there were super interesting conversations to be had in here. It's one of my favorite short horror books because it doesn't waste any time. It gets clear to the point. It's very unsettling. Our main character doesn't see what's going on around her as unsettling until she starts to make some realizations about her life and her husband and the community that she lives in. It's just an interesting time. Next is This Thing Between Us by Gus Marino, another short horror with very interesting conversations. Grief, loneliness, seclusion, a guy who thinks he wants to be on his own, but he realizes that some supernatural entity or vibe has followed him. This had such a good mix of like, you didn't really know what type of horror to classify this as. It's like tech horror, literary horror, ghost, demon, zombie horror. It had some of the most unsettling scenes I've read this year. It talked about immigration, it talked about death. I loved how it didn't hold back with like inserting Spanish without translation. It had folklore introduced. It was like a cozy horror book. Not cozy in a safe way, but like the atmosphere was just so well described, and I enjoyed it so much that it's in the top 5. Next up, let's get the last horror out of the way. My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. I know that it has such mixed reviews from people, and other people are starting to call this overhyped, which I hate so much. This is one of my favorite horror books that I've read in my entire life. Jade is just like my favorite character. I love how obsessed with slashers she is. I love all of the little essay excerpts. I love her analytical mind and how like unhinged she seemed, but all with like this greater goal. There was also this idea again of somebody being involved in something greater than themselves, and it just became completely chaotic by the end, and it was so fun. Stephen Graham Jones is just an all-time favorite. Next up, let's do In My Dreams I Hold the Knife by Ashley Winstead, which is my favorite thriller of the year. It's funny because when I do all of these year-end wrap-ups, I feel like I always worry about spoiling things too early and letting you know, like I have to keep some things a secret because I don't want anyone to know my favorites of the year. But I have really this year laid it all out there because I've been hating so much of what I'm reading. You know everything about my reading. You already know my favorites of the year, and you know my favorite horror, you know my favorite thrillers, you know my, like you get it. In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. This audiobook is coming out soon. It's finally getting an audiobook, the author just announced. So if you want to like keep your ear out for that and you have this on your radar, I feel like it's going to be a pretty good audiobook just because I love all of the different characters, all of the different timelines, and if it gets like multiple narrators, it's just gonna be great. We'll see. Anyway, so what I loved about this is it's just so fun. I really needed a fun thriller where we're following college friends and we have multiple timelines and you think you know who died and who did it, but there's always some surprising reveals. And again, this is one that people are calling overhyped because I know it's not like everybody's all-time favorite thing, and it's not the most groundbreaking thriller I've ever read, but having its college setting, having its like obnoxious cast of characters, seeing all of their relationship dynamics and how they change over the years, it was just a really good time. And lastly, Mom, turn away if you are watching because Dune has officially lost its cover. And I'm so sorry, and I'm glad that I got her the box set because I was gonna return this anyway, but I think I'll just hold on to it now. So Dune and Dune Messiah are like one thing in my mind. So this is in my top 10, but I guess like technically, okay, it's Dune. Frank Herbert's Dune. Not gonna try to talk about the plot. What I love about this is when I was originally watching the movie when I was like 10 years old, and I've always had this Dune story with me without fully reading the book. When people critiqued the movie, I know there are a lot of problems with the movie, the original, but I also thought a lot of people's dislike with the movie was because it wasn't going to be the authentic adventure story that I assumed Dune was. And I was wrong. So when I read this, I assumed so many things about what the story actually was versus what was the story I understood Dune to be and how the adaptations, plural, were done. But this actually turned out to not be like an adventure story at all, and the things that I knew that I loved about Dune remained the things that I love about Dune. It has so much internal monologue that it clearly is exhausting to many people, and I just love that so much. I love just constantly being in someone's head and them constantly thinking and us really getting an idea of what they're thinking. So much so that there are no surprises in Dune. And I think it's so cool that everything gets set up for us, whether it's someone narrating and like giving a little hint at what's to come, or we're just in someone's head and they are telling us what they're about to do and giving us full spoilers. What I think is more interesting isn't what happens, it's why it happens. So you learn throughout the story why certain things are going on, and I think that's what's the most enjoyable part of Dune, is slowly getting to understand the political systems and the worlds, the discussions about control and humanity and power systems and corruption. I think it's such a good time. The sci-fi that I read current day and that I've read over the past couple years are just nothing like this. And of all the books that I read this year, this is the one that has really made me rethink everything that I think that I know about my reading taste. And it's challenged me in a very unexpected way. So this was a very cool discovery for me, and why it's in the top 5. So that's it, kind of short and sweet today. If you were here, I really appreciate it. I know that some of these end of year things are more interesting than others. And that's it. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.